Salvation is found at the cross, and it's proved by the resurrection. Legalism adds to that, says that's not enough, and it says being led by the Holy Spirit is not enough. We need some legalism. We need to add to it. And it's arrogant, and it's judgmental, and it makes you die inside. Paul, in verse 11, you see, he says, oh man, I'm afraid I wasted my efforts on you. But then he goes on, and Kelly's going to go on and talk about that. And I just want to share with you, don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. You know, I realized one day I was sitting at a kitchen table, and I realized my morality falls short. My righteousness falls short. My wisdom falls short. My leadership falls short. My obedience falls short. My love falls short. My vision falls short. And yes, my faith falls short. But Jesus' doesn't. Genesis 15:6, which Paul is quoted in Galatians, says, Abraham believed, and it was credited to him as righteousness. It's not belief that saved him, but it is the God in whom he believed. Can you imagine my two Russian brothers going back and saying to my dad, oh, thanks, Mr. Cruz, this was great. Thanks for all the privileges of sonship, but we're going back to be slaves. And that's what the Galatians are duped into thinking by these false teachers, the Judaizers. And it's what you and I do every time we're tempted to believe that the proud are in and the humble are out. There's just something in each one of us that wants to say, I earned it. I earned it. And I got to ask you again, are you going to live like a slave, or are you going to live like a son? A slave has a taskmaster, a son has a loving father. A slave is known by his task, a son is known by his love. A slave is joyless, a son is joyful. A slave is hopeless, a son is hopeful. A slave sees serving others as a step down. A slave sees serving others as a step up. And that's indicative of God's kingdom being aligned opposite of the world's. Joseph Stoll at Moody Bible Institute has written a book published in the last year and a half called Following Christ. He documents in the book about persecution of Christians and slavery, just like I've shared with you today. And he tells a story that a missionary friend of his saw happen. They saw all the people had been shot, the adults had been shot, and they brought in, this is in Sudan, by the way, this is in Sudan where the northern people go to the south, kill the parents, like I talked about earlier, and bring the slaves and sometimes the women up. But he tells it this way. Just 2 weeks ago, a friend of mine who works in the Islamic fields told of a friend of his who's in the capital city of Sudan. I couldn't believe what my missionary friend was telling me. They watched a group of several hundred of these children gathered in the city square. The mullah came out, that's the Muslim, a militant Muslim group, I might add. Shiite Muslims, not Sunni Muslims who are peaceful. He came out of the mosque and commanded that all the children bow down and pray after him a prayer of conversion to Islam, or they would be shot. And they all bowed, except one. He was about 9 years old, and when asked why he didn't, he simply said that he couldn't because he was a child of Jesus Christ. He was a son. The angered mullah told him to fall down or he would be shot. And the child refused, and he commanded the guards to open fire. And as he fell to the ground, another child stood, and another child stood, until about 40 children stood to their feet in an expression of their allegiance to Jesus Christ. The mullah ordered 4 of them shot as well, and as they fell to the ground, not one of the others bowed. The mullah by now was so distraught that he yelled, "You are not worthy to be slaves." And he ordered the still standing children off to prison. If you want to be a son, say no to slavery, say no to sin, say no to legalism, say yes to Jesus Christ. You don't have to be a slave to sin and death, to religion that ruins, captured in that prison of unforgiveness that closes up your soul so you die a little bit inside. We can live like sons with the faith of the little boy in Sudan. I've asked Corbin and Marilyn and Marcia to come on up. And as they do, I want to ask you, what enslaves you? Maybe it's slavery to your flesh. excessive drinking, substance abuse, overeating, undereating, exercise at the expense of community, an illicit relationship, gossip, a choice of words that are community busters? What enslaves you? Maybe it's slavery to your eyes, your busy schedule, materialism, money, workaholism, control, the desire to be right, the desire to be first, the desire to be best, or the quest for more and more of another deal, to feel more and more of your fix, misusing the gifts God has given you for kingdom growth by leveraging them for the growth of your own kingdom. Maybe it's slavery to your mind, pride of life, destructive thoughts that are not of God, the desire for more education, more status, more respect, more recognition that says, look at me, all at the expense of being a son. But the desire for more and more of that drug of choice seems to close up your soul, and little by little you die inside. But it doesn't have to be. The security and the significance you're searching for are found in the truth of love of God at the cross of Jesus Christ. We have a choice: humbly accept adoption as sons into God's kingdom, or we can live in the denial of the grace that we earn grace. I'm convinced that this text today shows us that the difference between seeing myself as a slave or seeing myself as a son is whether or not I see spiritual debt already paid. A slave says I earned it, a son says I needed it. Romans 9:16 says that God's choosing of who is in and who is out is not by my desire, not by my effort, but by the mercy of the living God. I understand I need justice, so I ask God for mercy, and He gives me grace. Bow your heads. Use this time to reflect. We have two camps in this room, slaves and sons. I want to be crystal clear that I'm asking everyone to become a son, the likeness of God. You're either a slave to sin in need of a saving relationship with Jesus, or you're a son who's enslaved to legalism, attempting to prove yourself worthy of sonship. As Marilyn and Marcia sing this song, ask God to make you a son. Ask Him to make you a child He watches and cares for day and night. Ask Him to bring you out of the denial of slavery to religion.